The wind came hard over the ridges, cold enough to bite a man's fingers even through worn gloves. Below the slope, a small village hugged a thin creek. Teepees drawn close, smoke straight up in the still air, horses picketed on the flats. It looked quiet, safe, ordinary. It wasn't. Beyond the low hills, an exhausted detachment in blue crept forward, rifles ready, breath fogging in the dark. They were hungry and angry, and the country had given them nothing but dust for days. A village meant food before it meant anything else. Scouts had found the place by scent first, wood smoke on the wind, then by sign, fresh pony tracks, a travois trail cutting into the buttes, a ring of cold ashes not 12 hours old. The column followed the markers into broken ground until the first lodge tops showed past Willow. Orders moved man to man without a shout. No bugle, no talk, hit fast. Thumbs wiped grit from Springfield sights. Cinches came up a notch. Cartridges counted again by feel. They slid off the ridge, and the world narrowed to creak sound and the tick of Willow against boot leather. 2 dogs lifted their heads, barked twice, and it was too late. The first shots cracked the sky open. Warriors came out of the lodges grabbing rifles and bows. Women pulled children toward the cutbanks, and horses went high and wild, ropes snapping at picket pins. Soldiers ran into canvas and wood, cutting lodge covers, firing past poles, tripping on cookpots and sleeping robes as the village exploded into motion. The fight found its shape at the north end, where the ground broke fast into ravines and shelves. A small knot of families and fighters fell back there under a shelf of earth, tight cover, bad angles for anyone coming in. Among them was American Horse the Elder, the man whose word steadied that camp. He'd taken a bullet early. Blood darkened his shirt, but he would not leave. Shots from the hollow slapped dust off the lip. Every approach cost the attackers. Splinters in a cheek from a shattered lodgepole, a hit to the thigh when a hat rose too high, a carbine shoved forward on a crawl because the man beside you shook too hard to drag it himself. Behind the firing line, hunger ruled. Troopers ripped open racks and found dried meat, corn, berries strung to cure. Men chewed while they ran, powder black on their fingers. Others heaved meat into blankets, tying corners for a pack because nothing that could move with them would be left behind. On the flats, seized ponies pulled against rawhide and screamed. Smoke from breakfast fires mixed with powder, turning the air sharp and bitter. The ravine held. Ammunition inside was low, but every round counted. Mothers pressed children into their skirts, hands over ears when bullets ripped dirt from the bank and sifted down like gray rain. American Horse's wound worsened. He stood once, set his back to the wall, and went to one knee with his teeth clenched, refusing a hand up. The soldiers spoke from the rim. Bring out the women and children. Lay down the rifles. The answer came quiet and even. Not yet. Time stretched thin. Sun burned the frost off the grass. The firing slowed a fraction, the way it does when men are counting the last cartridges in their heads. A white scrap went up on a gun rod, flat in the windless cut. Voices traded across the space again. This time the hollow answered yes. One by one they came out, hands up, faces gray with dust, a boy looking back at the dark as if he'd left something he needed. Last was American Horse, upright, blood-soaking cloth at his belly. He looked at the rifles pointed his way and kept his eyes level. They carried him to a lodge the soldiers had left standing for shade. The surgeon did what he could with hot water and nerve. Some wounds are final. He died before evening with his family near. With the hold broken, the village fell to pieces. Teepees came down under bayonets and boot heels. Meat and grain went over pack saddles. Hides and robes piled high. More than 100 ponies were roped together in a long, restless line. What couldn't be carried burned. Flames ran up lodge poles and turned hide to black curls. Smoke climbed straight and then leaned when the wind remembered itself. The creek ran around ash and canvas and kept its own small sound under the roar. Riders showed on the far ridge, first a few, then more, testing distance with long shots that smacked dirt and stone. The soldiers pulled back from the edges and settled on ground that gave them lines of fire. The rear of the column pushed up at last, faces hollow from weeks of short rations. Men ate as they worked, gagged, and kept eating. Surgeons boiled instruments in kettles black with soot. Prisoners sat with hands bound, eyes on the ground, listening for the count of horses and the jingle of bit chains, facts that told them as much as any officer's report. Among the wreckage, trophies surfaced: a torn guidance staff, a cavalry belt plate, a cartridge pouch stamped with a familiar number. Word ran fast that gear from the June fight had been found here. It didn't change the dead. It did change the way some men stood, as if the day leaned a fraction back their way. The papers would print that part. They would not have room for the woman who kept her palm on a man's ribs until a stranger told her to move. By afternoon, the place was ash and churned mud. Coyotes would nose through it before night. The column moved, dragging stock and supplies, leaving black circles in the grass and a smell that stuck in hair and cloth. Behind them, the hills took back their silence the way they always do, slow and sure, as if the morning had been a weather change, not a fight. What did Slim Buttes change? On paper, a needed win, rations seized, ponies recovered, prisoners taken, a leader down. For the army, it was a story to stack against the shame the river had written that summer. For the Lakota, it was another cut deep enough to show in winter: food gone, shelter gone, families broken further into the wind. The lesson for both was plain. The war had turned into a grind. Burn what feeds a people, run them thin, make winter finish what bullets start. Men in blue rode on, chewing as they went, hands steadier for the first time in days. They slept in saddles and woke with chins on chests. Rawhide creaked, ropes snapped, 30 head vanished into the dark when a knot failed, and no one caught them. In the rear, a sergeant with a voice like gravel shook men awake by name and pointed them back into line. No speeches, no glory, just miles. Out in the hills, those who had escaped gathered, counted, and decided. Names of the dead were spoken. Routes for the next day were set by water and cover, not by habit. Cartridges were pooled and shared. The story of the ravine was told the way truth is told, without hurry and without softening. A man had stood and would not leave. He had died with his people near. Winter was coming faster now. News traveled east in straight lines and careful phrases. Reports called it brisk and successful, the first clean strike since the river fight. They added the trophies, because readers liked the balance of that. They did not print the sound of a child trying not to cry, or the way a doctor's hands shook after the last breath left a man he could not save. Years later, maps show Slim Buttes as a dot. Stand there at first light, and the dot becomes ground. Low ridges that hide a village until you are on top of it. A creek that keeps secrets in its bends. A ledge where stone remembers the shape of people pressed tight together. The wind does what it has always done: move, forget, remember anyway. The hills keep the echo of rifles whether anyone speaks the name or not. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from the old frontier.